Hello and welcome to our market alert video for the week ended March 4th, 2022. And a lot has happened this week, so I want to dive right in and get you updated on what our thinking is right now. So first of all, the issues that our economy and that were threatening us before the Ukraine crisis came along are still here. So if anything, the Ukraine crisis has made it worse. So let's go back and review where we were before this all started. We had inflation that was near 40, 50-year highs. We had a Federal Reserve that was way behind schedule or behind the curve and now having to play catch up by raising interest rates. Some people are talking about 9 times this year. And the thing about inflation that is scary is that it robs us of our purchasing power. But the other part of this situation is that it also slows down the economy, because if things get expensive, then consumers can't afford stuff. And if they stop buying, then we could potentially see a recession or a stagnating economy. The combination of that is called stagflation. And what we've always said on our show is that stagflation is cancer and inflation is the flu. And so, the problem with stagflation is it feeds on itself. It's kind of a self-fulfilling, and it spirals downward. And once it takes hold, it is extremely difficult for central banks to exercise that from the system. So they want to get ahead of that. Paul Volcker, back in the early 80s, who was the Federal Reserve chairman at that time, saw that and said, okay, we're going to create a recession. We're going to raise interest rates, and many of you may remember mortgages of 16% and CDs that were paying 10% and all of that. We're going to raise interest rates. We're going to induce a recession, a bad one, because that is favorable, because we're going to get the inflation out of the system than it is to have stagflation, which is inflation and a slowing economy at the same time. That's a really bad combination. So our Federal Reserve now is kind of faced with the same sort of situation. We have an economy that is subject to high inflation, which eventually, if not cured, could cause the economy to slow, and that could bring on stagflation. So that's why people are saying they need to raise interest rates 9 times this year. Well, that was before Ukraine. Now you add that whole situation. So what could happen to make things even worse than they were? Well, number one is that the oil prices we've seen have skyrocketed. They're at $110 a barrel, I saw, and there are people who are saying it could go higher. Prices of gas at the pump have gone up significantly. I read that there's a city where gas is now $5 a gallon. And, the average consumer in our country makes about $60,000. And if you make $60,000, you don't take too much home. After taxes and benefits and everything else that's taken out of your paycheck. And if we see the prices of things go up, the purchasing power, the stuff that's left over for, non-essential expenses goes way down. Our consumer represents 70% of our economy or more. And if they slow down, the economy will slow down with them, in our view. So all of those things are now made worse by this whole Ukraine situation. Now, there's another component of this that I haven't heard much talked about, but was brought up by an analyst that, again, I saw on Bloomberg this morning. He was talking about how these sanctions that we've placed on the Russian banks could create what he called a Lehman moment. Now, you may recall back in 2008, Lehman was one of the largest banks in the United States, and they went under. And because the banking, the network is also interconnected. Everything is, the intermediaries. It's like a big spider web. Everything's connected to each other. And when Lehman went under, it caused all of that to fall apart. And we had the massive, the financial crisis, and we had all kinds of stuff that came from that. So what he said is that these banks, if we stop the ability of Russian banks to do business, then the intermediaries and the other banks that are connected in that system could see a default. We could have a large Western bank, not a Russian bank, a Western bank default. If that were to happen, the central banks around the world are going to need to come to the rescue, just like they did with Lehman and other banks during the crisis. And so that situation could become pretty ugly as well. So the downside right now, in our view, is way greater than the upside. And when that equation happens, we always ask you, what strategies do you have in place to protect yourself from that? What if we have another 2008 or some terrible downside? At our firm, we have our invest and protect strategy, and we implement that to help mitigate the downside risk to our clients. And what we always say about our strategy is that, we want to participate unlimitedly on the upside. But when things go down, we want it to be a tolerable downside. Our strategy does not protect against any losses, but if we're going to lose money, we want it to be tolerable, meaning we don't want it to create a situation where our money doesn't last as long as we do. Okay, so because our goal is twofold. One, we want your money to last as long as you do. And secondly, we want you to have financial peace of mind. Now, what I would encourage you to do is to go to our website. It's rpoa.com. And when you're there, click on Meet with an Advisor, talk with one of our retirement planners, and talk about risk mitigation, talk about diversification, talk about what you should be doing now, given that we are potentially on the verge of something really, really nasty. So I thank you for watching this video. I hope that we can get together and that we can help you. So again, thank you for watching this video, and we'll talk soon.